you have to appreciate the smaller things, hopefully. And I hope that every time I decide to say something, I'm just gonna say is that we were lucky enough that I'm here to say it, or like I'm here to share it, or I'm not in a worse situation. Like I could have afforded to come to Dubai and do this podcast, but there are certain things that just always remember that somehow you are lucky.
The Nobody's Famous Podcast.
Guys, and we are back on the Nobody's Famous Podcast. We have a late one tonight. And we got Bruno on the keys, as always, in the beautiful Subsonic Studios. And today, I have a very, very, very special guest. Someone who I had only one proper conversation with.
1.5.
1.5, maybe. And it's a very big pleasure to have him with us, Abdul Sattar Raslan.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate, making this late drive and being with
From
us
Garhoud.
today. Yeah, from Garhoud. So thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I want to start off by, I'm Aboudi. Can I call you that?
Yeah.
I'll call you that
And,
since it's on your Instagram as well.
yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean, I'm going to start off with this. Personally, I'm very squeamish, when it comes to things medical. I love to know, I love to learn.
Yeah, but then there's the limit.
Then
Like,
I have a
there's
limit.
a certain limit everyone has. It differs between the people, but everyone has that limit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, in some scenarios, blood might be okay, organs might be okay, but then I reach a point where like it's
I
a bit,
feel like for people, blood is never okay, but then there just comes to a point where either you're numb to it or you just need an extra amount of blood more than other people to be
oh
squeamish.
my God, even just talking about it. So I mean, that my question is, how did you what's the decision you took to pursue this path in the medical field?
Okay, so honestly, it's a bit of a typical answer, but most of my family were in the medical field. So I had my mom and all her family decided to pursue medicine in Syria. I'm originally Syrian. And then I also had my sister who decided to do biology and then medicine in AUB. And then when she was in medical school, she was like, why not just come to AUB? And I personally didn't want to go to Lebanon, or like I wanted to go to the States directly right after high school. It's like the coming of age 17-year-old boy leaving Abu Dhabi. But I was like, I'll give it a shot, at least for a semester. My other uni plans didn't work out. And then one day, I really got sucked into the pre-medical life. And then I was like, you know what? All my family did it. Why not? I didn't have like this all passionate story of being in medicine where I had like a personal story within medicine. I just felt like there was a path, and then there were just signals to continue on this path. And then I was just like, why not continue?
I still find that super weird. I tell
Yeah.
you why, because like to be in the position that you're in, you have to have that kind of resilience. And maybe I'm wrong because I don't know what it
Yeah.
feels like, but to be able to be in those situations where either to save a life or to be a part of an operation, or somebody comes in, you're not really sure what's wrong with them, to do that takes guts.
I completely understand where you're coming from, but from where I see it is that, okay, there's a baseline level of maturity that everyone in medicine does have. But I feel like what you do doesn't really define you. Like, do you get what I mean? I feel like your professional life can be completely different than who you are as a person. Like, personally, I feel like if a random person who doesn't know I'm in medicine sees me in a regular weekend day, like a weekend or just out with a bunch of friends, they wouldn't even like guess I'm in medicine. Or else like I'm also not like, I seem like I'm clean cut and firm when I'm in medicine or when I'm in the hospital, but it's actually I'm the furthest thing from that in real life. So it's like I understand that everyone has these personality traits that they seem to associate with medicine, but I'd be very surprised. Like, I've met a lot of myself and my colleagues are like, you wouldn't believe that we're actually like in the medical field unless probed to say what we're doing. but I feel like everyone has their own. Of course, there's always a traditional medical persona, but I feel like we kind of school away from it, especially with every year. Like
Mm.
people are becoming more different in the field.
I mean, you actually finally put a word to this kind of notion. I find it fascinating, like to be able to go to a doctor and for them to be able to assess and to see the type of things that they see. The word that the expression you used was the baseline maturity. I mean, I understand it now that you've actually. I just still find it fascinating that for you to go in the medical field, you need to have the baseline maturity, but you need to have a threshold of tolerance to. Uh, I don't know what's the best way to say it, but to see, whether it's suffering, whether it's pain, whether it's uh, fear, these kinds of things, and I just feel that you guys do it so effortlessly.
It isn't as effortlessly as everyone would like to believe,
Well,
or
there you go.
we'd like to believe, but it does come with experience and it does come with years of training, I feel. I'm gonna be honest, I've just done 2 years of clinical work at AUBMC, but what I started, I don't know if I'm gonna count the situations of these 2 years as the reason I
Mm,
become like that, but like the person I started entering the hospital is completely different than the person I'm exiting now. Like I just have a month of vacation, finals, and I'm done with medicine as a whole in med school. But then I just feel like I always retrospectively look back at myself and I really feel like the person I really did start, like even looking like I'm just like I'm not the same
mm,
person. I'm not sure which is better, honestly, but I feel like we've we emulate ourselves, and medicine tends to mold you into the person you're supposed to become. I know it's very strange, and I've never felt that before in my life. Like I've done it, and I've never felt in biology. I have a bachelor's in biology. I never felt it there. I felt like my high school experience in Shefat was pretty grueling, but like I never saw it as hard as those 4 years, specifically the last 2 years of medicine. It really molds your character,
mm.
and molds who you are, what you want to achieve, um, everything, every aspect in your life in a way that might be noticed or might not be noticed.
Yeah, that's funny because I had a question on the misconceptions of being in the medical field. I mean, apart from the kind of glaring misconception that I have about this is that how you change as a person from the point you enter until you exit. What are some of the other things you think people have about doctors and
Is that we can't make mistakes. Honestly, it's the notion that you're in the medical field, you know better. Like honestly, sometimes we're just human. Like we can do mistakes. We've done a lot of mistakes. You just need to be like skilled enough to try to repair it before it leads to a more
Mm,
serious mistake. But that's like human nature. You can't ever remove that. But the problem I've had with some people, or like whether it be patients, whether it be friends, whether it be like to know who I am as a person, is that everyone thinks that a medical person is impermeable to fault, which is hardly the case. If anything, we tend to do mistakes if a lot of stress is put on us. And another thing is that we're expected to be professional all the time, which I completely agree. It's very important to be professional in the medical field. But you're honestly allowed to break down sometimes, and you're honestly allowed to be truthful, and you're honestly allowed to have your bad days. And not everyone has good days, but it's always like, I don't like the pedestal people put doctors in, especially in this society. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, it's either a doctor or engineer or lawyer. No, I really don't like the fact. Like I personally say, if I had my own children, I wouldn't tell them to go into medicine unless they're very certain that this is something that they want. Other than that, I'll honestly tell them my true experiences with the field. And I just feel like there are a lot of misconceptions of what it truly is like to be there. And honestly, I find like honestly, medicine is a double-edged sword, and it can either make you or break you. It can either honestly turn you out, like as I said with the molding thing, it can mold you into a better person. But I honestly see it mold people into a person that I don't think like like they expected they'd ever be in a negative way. It's just you need to know how to deal with the field.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to take in because it really just, as you said, to put people on a pedestal, but even, people who are not in the field, they look in and they always think that, the answer is there. They'll find the answer from that person. They'll find, like the solution is
Yeah.
there, and it's so difficult to put that kind of pressure.
Honestly, I was just telling my friend like a couple of hours ago, is that honestly, like I sometimes watch medical shows and then I look at like the way things are dealt there. I'm just like, this is completely it's so easy to take a history from a patient or like know the diagnosis straight away. That never happens in real life. Like I was just talking about a specific show, I won't name it, but like I'm just saying is that it honestly takes time, and it's honestly, I feel it's like a working relationship with the patient. Is the patient willing to cooperate or not? If they're willing to cooperate, that's already half the battle. You have someone who can tell you what's going on with them. And then other than that, honestly, everything is like protocol. Like everything, there is a standard way of doing things. Of course, you have the zebras everywhere. In the shows, there are always the zebras. But like, there's always the zebras everywhere. But then in the end, it's honestly like, it's a job. Like, I find it like it has as much honor as anyone doing any other job in the world. Like, okay, the stakes are higher with human life. I completely understand. But in the end, you don't want to put or ostracize yourself from the rest of the society and the rest of humanity, because in the end, they're also with you in life and they're also going through the same things you're going through. And honestly, like, we're doctors, but we're also patients sometimes, and
Yeah, that's true.
you have to know. You have to know.
Yeah,
You have
even
to know
the barber needs a haircut.
yeah, exactly. Everyone needs someone's help in a certain amount of time, or someone's advice or someone's guidance. And honestly, in medicine, I always had the strong assumption that I would always get the most help from like the most senior professor, and it was never the case. Like, because they don't have time. I'd always like ask like the nurses that are like so like they do so much work and they're so underappreciated, especially by like our society. They do so much work and they honestly give so much help because they're always there. Like they're the ones who have they have 8-hour shifts. They don't have the 24-hour shifts that some doctors do, but like their floor, the floor that they've been on, becomes their home. They work there for years, whereas we rotate. So they know a lot more. And I honestly feel like unless you're willing to like show that this is a team effort, or like show that you're willing to gain help or get help from someone, then you're never going to advance. Neither as a doctor or a physician or as a human. Like in the end, we're all there to help.
There's a lot of humility in your answers, showing, no, really, because it's kind of something that I thought I would see in you, but now you answering the questions, it's quite apparent, and it shows, that you are very well versed in medical field, in whether you know it or not. It really shows how much of yourself you give, but also at the same time, realizing the team effort as well.
No, honestly, I've really been in very tricky situations where, as a person who I think like I was always the know-it-all, like back then, I've really been put in very tough and serious situations that I've honestly gotten out of it just by, like, it can be like a simple situation where I just needed something, like some help from the nurse, to something big where like a nurse actually helps me like try to save someone. I know I've really been in situations where just a person that like isn't portrayed in the same light as you ends up helping you much more than you can help yourself. So I'm very against the whole dividing in the sense of the medical.
Well, yeah.
Or it's not only nurses. It can be like pharmacists. It can be like janitors. It can be anything. Honestly, they help. Like everyone does their role as long as they're willing to help each other. Then that's all that matters.
That's a great actually segue to what I wanted to actually ask you. That it's a shame that it actually took a pandemic for, myself included. I'm not saying, not singling myself out, but it's a shame that it took a pandemic for people to realize the value of the medical system, or at least going back to what you said, that it's okay for sometimes for the people in the medical field to break down. They have their days, they have bad days and stuff like that. So what do you think about that?
So, um, the last, I feel, true pandemic that we've been through, like we've always had the outbreaks of swine flu, bird flu, MERS, SARS, and all these things. But I think the last true pandemic happened like in the 1910s with the Spanish influenza and the Europe that spread throughout the world. And I feel like the point of the pandemic is that it came at a point where people honestly least expect it. Ourselves as medical professionals, a good bunch of us didn't believe that this pandemic was actually going to gain the traction or like gain the effect. Like we didn't know it was that deadly. We didn't know it was that contagious. We didn't know. And I feel like it's normal that we didn't know that much, even though people had these expectations that we should know that much. It's like we're dealing with something new and it's new to you. It's just like as it's new to us. Okay, we're here to fight it with everything we have, but some people have these ridiculous expectations like, okay, you're going to cure us. Like this is something foreign. This is something new. And we're dealing with it the same rate you're dealing with it. And we don't have any hidden codes or hidden things that help us more than you. Okay. And honestly, like there are certain points in like, I don't want to mention stories, but like there are certain situations in the pandemic where honestly, some patients, like I wouldn't say that it took a pandemic to realize what stuff. I felt like, I completely understand where they're coming from because I wouldn't know what I would do in such a situation. But like, they kind of put emphasis that, okay, their family member is sick. We need to help them. We did our best, but sometimes you come at a crossroads. It's like some things are left up to either higher powers or like the medicine to actually work. Like we've done all our interventions. There just comes a crossroads that we can't interfere anymore. And then the patients come into the sense where they kind of like tell us like, you don't know what we're going through. You have to help this person. And then in the end, like I'd find out like a colleague who is receiving such hate from or like such angry words from a patient would have their own family member as well that were sick. And it's just like we're always put in the spot like that. Okay, we have to help and we have to do certain things, but we're also being affected in the pandemic just as much as you are. And we were patients and are patients just the same way as you. As long as we put our professional roles, we'll do the best of our knowledge. But sometimes, honestly, the expectations are sometimes ludicrous. It's like either they bombard you on your phone, where it's not personally to me because like I don't give my phone to patients, and second of all, it's like I'm not known yet. But with more of the senior physicians, like they have the right to bombard their phones, and they try to answer as much as they can, but like. And they need to sleep, they need to eat, they need to deal with their own issues, they need to deal with their own illness. Like, even though some doctors were seeing patients while they were sick at home through like online visits, it's like they were dealing with it. Like you have to understand that everything needs to be put in context. And just because we're in medicine and we're sort of seen as like the saving grace for some people, it doesn't mean that we're impermeable to life. Like we get hit the same way everyone else gets hit. And I feel like people didn't understand this at first, but with this pandemic, people started realizing it more. People started realizing we're tired. People started realizing the healthcare needs more funding in certain things. People need to put more money in research. People need to invest in things that actually, honestly, I'm going to say some things in life I don't feel like are worth investing that much, whereas it needs to go into better causes. But I feel like, I'm sorry it took a pandemic to realize that, but everyone learned, honestly, the hard way sometimes. So just have to.
Yeah, I can't imagine the toughness of those types of situations that you and your colleagues are facing. And it's very, I can see where you're coming from. It's very tough to work on that kind of situation so that it's always a positive outcome. And, I cannot imagine the type of like stress and pressure and then it comes to a point where you're having to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Before I formally introduce you, Abdul Sattar, I wanted to take a lighter stance on some of the questions and ask
Okay.
you. I asked you to send me a photo. You sent me one of you skydiving.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that photo?
I feel like just to show people that we actually have a life outside medicine. I feel like I knew I was going to be asked a lot of medical questions. So I was just like, why not show them another side of me? I didn't want to take a picture of me clubbing, drinking and stuff like that. So I'm just like, the only hobby that I decided to do is an adventure. I was just like, why not send them that?
Skydiving was a hobby?
Like, it was something I was willing to do. Like, I would do it again if I had the money and the means. But like, I felt like it was something that I was willing to do. I've always wanted to do it. And then I was just like, you know what? Why not show them the thing that I wanted to try for such a long time?
Amazing. That's cool. I actually told the skydiving story on the first episode ever of the podcast to Jad, actually. And it was, I'm sure that experience will always live on. Before we get into more of these medical questions, the last question before that, what do you think, Abudi, is the lasting impression people will take from this show?
From this this specific podcast show between you and I, or your podcast?
No, I mean the show between me and you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I wish people don't go through what honestly my colleagues and I had to go through, and like some of the things that I'm about to share. But I hope that people just in these times, there's a lot of downers. There's a lot of things bringing people down, and honestly, I've been like I diagnosed myself as clinically depressed for like a while, and it's just that sometimes we were always, I felt like up to the pandemic, we were always looking for big things to wow us or to make us happy. And I feel like this isn't attainable anymore. And especially after the pandemic. And I feel like you have to appreciate the smaller things, hopefully. And I hope that every time I decide to say something, I'm just gonna say is that we were lucky enough that I'm here to say it, or like I'm here to share it, or I'm not in a worse situation. Like I could have afforded to come to Dubai and do this podcast, but there are certain things that just always remember that somehow you are lucky in some way, but just always know that whenever you're that close to giving up, it's that you just need to reshuffle your ideas in your head and try to see some saving grace.
I love that. I love that because I've been through that many times. And yeah, it sounds cliche to say appreciate the little things, but actually, again,
Not easy.
shame that the pandemic had to be one of those
Yeah,
reasons.
it's not easy.
but
And I think it needs to have been a strong stimulus. Like, I don't know people that would be willing to give up so many things in their life unless it was for the role of trying to save them and the people around them. I think it needed, honestly, like, I know it's such a horrible stimulus to have been happen, but sometimes strong things need to happen for the world to wake up a bit.
So now that we're at the point where I want to actually formally introduce you, Abdul Sattar, how about briefly kind of summarize who you are, without going too technical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a 23-year-old, turning 24 next week.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'm Syrian, but born and raised in Abu Dhabi for 17 years. And I moved to Lebanon for studies. I did a bachelor's in biology, and I'm currently going to complete my medical doctorate at AUB and AUBMC. And currently I've just been doing my clinical rotations, trying to map out things after med school, and also I'm dabbing in a little bit of research, and I've been undergoing different research projects on multiple fields. And also I've recently been put in the position, in one of the positions of students in the organizing committee of the nationwide COVID vaccine at AUBMC.
There's a lot there. Abudi, you founded this amazing initiative, by the way, to help the preclinical and clinical medical students administer first aid.
Yeah.
This very nice, very awesome initiative, I would say. And I have two questions here. I mean, how do you prepare the students for what they're about to kind of like face?
So, this is a very so when I first came with AUBM Cares, because first aid, it's called AUBM Cares because the main initiative we have, the main NGO we have at AUBMC and AUB Faculty of Medicine is called AUBM Cares, which is they basically it's not very spoken of, but I'm just going to speak about it a little because it's amazing. It's such an amazing initiative. Is that we have students, residents, doctors, attendings, nurses that take from their own free time and do volunteer work whenever like an NGO, another NGO, or like our own NGOs need help with dealing with patients. So an example is a health clinic called HEAL that operates every Saturday. We see migrant workers for free, and we see people from the LGBTQI community for free, and those that can't afford proper care for free. We also have a clinic on Fridays with family medicine, as we see geriatric and elderly patients for free as well. And we try to, and for all these clinics, we try to also have our mini pharmacy where we give them unexpired medication that people donated for us.
Oh, amazing.
So it's we have a lot of roles and stuff. So I just thought that this initiative took time to take place because there were so many road bumps on the way. So I decided to do AUBM Cares First Aid, inspired after the October revolution in Lebanon. Is that we wanted to go into the revolution, but we also wanted to not go there and not like, especially as a med student, you should have a basic skill set of first aid knowledge, just because within that group, people will try to look at you to try to know what's happening. And unfortunately, in the first 2 to 3 years of medical school, you're not going to know how to manage these things. Like, I know that people expect us to know everything in the first few years, but honestly, until my last year of medical school, I think I know a bit, and I still need to learn a lot. But I felt like if we just had to give them this training on how to deal with the situation, that would be very beneficial for them. It can honestly bring more good to the revolution scene. And then right as I was about to conceive it, COVID hit, and we had to put a stop in the operation a bit because I couldn't, like, if I wanted to do lectures, I couldn't get that many people in the lectures. That's before where the computer apps came into play, where we could start doing the lectures. And then we also had the practical sessions where if I wanted to teach people how to like resuscitate or like how to suture things, that I couldn't bring them into classes, and no one's going to volunteer in a pandemic time. So that took time. And then just as about to start, the Beirut blast happened in August. And then more than ever did I realize, I said to myself, I'm just like, we need to start this initiative. And even if we just don't, I told them, like, I don't care. We can skip the whole practical part, just the knowledge. Like, I'm willing to just give them the knowledge of learning to try to see, to try to at least alter an event or event's unfortunate discourse, or try to do something to prevent more harm, is that everyone should be educated. So I was like, I had to do this. And right, like a bit after revolution, I'm just like, we had our first event already scheduled, and it was Tawra hazard. So it was like what to do with pepper spray or whatever. It was just like random things, but a lot of pre-medical and medical students that are very muthamsin, or like very enthusiastic in these things, they learned a lot and they liked asking it. And we had like our ER doctor give us a lecture, Dr. Thar, which was amazing. And then now we actually have, next week, we have our upcoming one is of neurological emergencies. So if someone has a stroke, how to deal with it. Usually they just bring it to the hospital, but it's like if we just teach people some important things to know, it's like people expect and know those in different time points, they are given different treatments. Like sometimes we go full treatment, sometimes we don't. And we just need to tell people like the differences, and hopefully it will help. Or like what are the warning signs, what are the do's and don'ts, how to like recognize a stroke, just certain details. But I feel like knowledge is a good motivator and instigator of change.
And how have you noticed the students changing? Like, where do you notice like change in them?
Personally, I don't follow up on a point by point, but I've gotten like I do surveys post the events, and I've gotten great feedback from them. So I'm very satisfied with that. And honestly, and I always think of it like this, is that I'm not assuming I'm gonna change mountains with this thing, but just I always assume the what if, like what if there was a situation where this piece of information could help change something, then that's good enough for me. And even if it didn't, what harm did I do by creating this initiative? It was like we had no funding. It was just like everything was free and everything was voluntary. So it was just like, what's the harm of doing it, except for education, which, as I said, is a powerful instigator of change.
No, that's great. And I think we took those classes for granted, I guess, when we did some of the
A lot
first
of
aid stuff. Some of the practical stuff.
Mhm.
And as you said, would be always good to at least have some
refreshers. Even like the elderly, some elderly physicians joined if they were too specialized in their field, they sometimes forget the
correct.
basic step.
Well, with that, Abudi, I want to move on to the bonus question round. We actually met under very harrowing circumstances, and I wanted to ask you if you're willing to share, about your experience with what happened during the Beirut blast.
Mm-hmm.
There was, we had chatted very briefly.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about how the experience that you had.
Yeah.
And it was really like I tried at that time to just see if anybody wants to chat, could be a sounding board for them or something like that. At the very least, we could have done something like that. And you reached out to me, and if you would like to share the experience, I would love to hear your perspective on what you went through.
Yeah. So August 4th, 2020 was a day I hope that no one ever has the chance in their lifetime to experience such an event. It was one of the most horrible things probably is the most horrible thing that I've ever had to go through. And it started honestly, how would I say it? It's like what was different is that from the things before, like COVID and the political and the political and all these type of crises, is that it was very unexpected, and it produced in a single moment. It produced such chaos and such fear and such disaster. Like it was just a disaster. Like it's just things that you could have seen. Like you watch these movies as a kid and just saying, "Oh, like I'm never gonna see this in my life," and then to actually experience it, it's just like what's happening? A lot of people like were having trouble finding this is reality, and it was a very difficult day. So my personal experience was that I was putting my PJs and stuff like that. I was just thinking, okay, like what am I gonna study today? Everything. And then all of a sudden at 6:07, I just hear a sound that I never heard before, and there's just like this flash of light, and it was very weird. I'm just like, this is like, am I dying? Like I didn't know what was happening, and then all of a sudden after that, I hear like glass breaking everywhere, not in my apartment and then stuff, and then I just realized like people on the street are like taking pictures of my building, but then people in my building were taking pictures of the other building, and the other building were like taking pictures of us. It's just like what was happening. Like we didn't know what was happening. And then that's when we WhatsApp. It's just like, guys, what happened? Like in the medical group, it's just like explosion in Hamra. No, it's explosion in where the government is. It was a targeted assassination and all these things. And you're just like what's happening? We don't know. And then we started like I still remember I was looking at my phone, and then I had this balcony, and my balcony, my building's a bit small, but it can see pretty far into Beirut, which is weird. But like, I don't know, I just look left into the balcony, and I just see this mushroom cloud that was super far away. I'm just like, this is not close. Like, but how did it affect us? Like, it wasn't making sense. Like distance wise, and I was just thinking mathematically. I was just like, nothing makes sense. Like, what is this explosion that caused? Like, was it like a targeted attack from another country? Like, we all started thinking it was an attack from another country, and we were going into war. And then we started getting news from the hospital, and then I actually got a voice note from some of my colleagues in the emergency room saying, like, I'm not gonna go into too much details, but it was just like chaos, and that people were coming to zombies, full of blood, just to the emergency room, and like they needed help, and they needed people to come. And then I called my parents to tell them I'm okay, because my parents live in Abu Dhabi, so I'm just like, I didn't want them to hear it through the news. And like, actually, first time I called, my mom was just like, what are you selling? Like, I'm on the news right now, there's nothing. And then as I was with her on the phone, the news started coming out. And then I'm just like, I'm okay, I just need to go to the hospital, and I might not answer for a while. I run back to the hospital, and I was running back, like I live 7 minutes walking to the hospital. I've just seen chaos on the streets, and like glass, and like people bleeding, and it was really bad. And then I go and I just see people, and everyone's like shocked and like huddled up. It's like, what were we doing? And then as I was entering the ER through the back door, it was chaos. And I've never seen it. Like, there's no lights in the ER. The roof fell on the ground. People were injured, and people were like dealing with patients and treating patients on the floor without light, or like they were using, like, I had to use this telephone's flashlight, and we just had to make do with what we have. And this was during Corona, but like there was no Corona.
Yeah, but you can't.
Yeah, there was no Corona. And I just see that physicians and my friends like sweating, and like no one's wearing anything. It was chaotic. And then I'm just like, some residents are older than me, knew me. They were just like, take this, start doing what you know what to do. And then I just like had to deal with as much as I can deal with. And like, I knew how to suture a bit. I knew how to like staple a bit. I knew how to, like, I found that like I knew where things were in the ER a bit, so, cause I passed through it before, and I knew where to like get the stuff. And I also I know a lot of the hospital staff, so if I felt like they needed like a certain department, because the more senior ones were just shouting for specific departments to come, like I would bring the person to the department to see the patient. But it was just like that. It was very chaotic. And then, but fortunately enough, we had a lot of staff, and even the Friday before, a lot of personnel got fired by the institution, but they came back and they actually helped. And it was honestly a lot of efforts coming from the doctors that they decided that they were going to help, no matter, even the most specialized doctor that really forgot everything. They decided like it was their job, and people were trying to come up, and even members of the public that got injured, they were trying to help us with what skill sets they have. I remember there was this elderly grandma. She was like, I'm a retired nurse, but I want to work. Got to witness a moment of destruction in a second that altered the lives and the fates of so many people in Lebanon and in Beirut.
Yeah, look, I didn't mean to, bring back some haunting memories, but I just felt that, in that moment, most of us felt really helpless. And like I said, when we started talking, that we take for granted the amount of work and effort that you guys put into things, and the perspectives that you guys see that are very different,
And that's honestly something I want to clarify, is that I know that because everyone's so far away, especially there's a lot of Lebanese nationals in the UAE and in other countries such as France and whatnot, is that I've always gotten this. They were saying is that this was very hard for us, even though we were far away and we felt helpless. And I'm just saying, you're not supposed to feel helpless because it wasn't in your power to do anything. And it was very bad that we had to go through that, but you're doing all you can. And even though you don't have to be there physically to help, like, I know so many people that protest and donations and like actively came to Lebanon after the blast happened, is that's enough. And even just, I find good intentions to the people during that difficult time is help enough. Not everything has to be on the same level to be considered help. And this is something that isn't only just for the Beirut blast, it's for everything that happened in Lebanon, or everything that happens in life, is that you always feel like the need that you have to go through the experience yourself to actually and try to help in the situation, to actually for it to be considered help, which isn't the case at all. And honestly, you just have to be willing to just give good intentions and to do the right thing from where you are, whether it be geographically, emotionally, anywhere. It's just where you are as a person, to do what you can. And even if you can't, just don't feel the pressure to do so. It's just everyone has their own way of helping and their own way of dealing with things. It's completely understandable.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say that I've أثرت, as they say in Lebanese, that I've...
No one else did, even if
Yeah.
you think you do.
Yeah. Well, Abdul Sattar, I want to say thanks for sharing the insight on the last part that you just mentioned. I mean, the word resilience, I'm not gonna use it. I'm not gonna use it.
Actually, like one of a great mentor of mine, she recently was featured in AJ Plus for her experience and her resilience, because like we're as and this is one of the things where I see, like, as doctors, we're just we have emotions of problems like other people do, and she like showcased it very well, which is completely true, is that we're tired of being resilient. Okay, like, we're trying our best to be resilient, but there comes a breaking point. And after the blast and after Corona, after everything political, something, I'm not Lebanese, but I really feel like I was for the past 2 years, weirdly enough, is that because like I've seen what my friends had to go through, and some family members had to go through, and I'm just like, this isn't the way of living. It isn't resilience anymore. It became borderline torture. And she even said one of my favorite quotes, like, Beirut's like opium. Is like, you're addicted to it, but you don't realize how dangerous or toxic it is for you, which is completely true. Is that you love the country so much and you have the best memories. I had the best first 5.5 years in Lebanon, my whole life. But it's just sometimes you can't. It's just like sometimes you need to know, as I said before the interview, you need to know how to lay your cards and fold your cards, and need to know when to leave. And a lot of physicians are leaving, and I know some people take it in a very negative way. And like, I was even having an argument with a doctor about it, is that you don't leave Lebanon when the going gets tough and the going gets rough, which I think, and I feel like, but that's the problem, is that we're trying to fix all the country's mistakes, and that's not on us as physicians. We're like, I know that we have such an important job, but our job comes with limitations. There are things that are outside our scope, that if a doctor doesn't want to deal with these things, they have the right not to deal with these things, and they have the right to go seek a better future for themselves. They've spent their whole lives studying, their whole lives working for what? To be treated as a person who's supposed to save a country from what they are. That wasn't part of their job description. That isn't part of their life. That isn't expected from them. Is that, no, it's their right to see what's fit for their own life. In the end, you only have one life to live, and if you don't picture your life there anymore, it's completely fair to leave. I know it's very bad, and I know it's happening all of a sudden, but then that's not their problem, because there are other people that led them to doing into this decision, and those people really should be held accountable for it. That's all.
Yeah, that topic delved into it quite a bit sometimes with here on the show and talking about what that really means. And it's very clear, Abdul Sattar, that you are a very good conversationalist. And that's where I wanted to kind of give the floor to you, to just maybe talk about something that you want to talk about before we, close everything off.
There's actually a topic I wanted to discuss, weirdly enough. I know I might seem like very involved in the medical field, but speaking of that, you have to live your own life and make your own decisions and see where you see yourself in the future and map out the lives that you want to have now. Also a reference is that I actually this year was a bit tough because I'm actually transitioning to outside clinical medicine, and I realized this wasn't the life that I wanted. And I'm actually pursuing careers in healthcare management or going into the fields of public health or infection control and pandemic management and those things. And I just feel like people always look to me and they're just like, you studied 7 years of medicine for what? Made your parents spend all that money for what? And I just look at them and I'm just realizing is that I learned a lot in medicine, and I did I had a lot of experiences, the good and the bad. And just because you don't follow the classical trajectory of things doesn't make you less of a person, doesn't make you less of a doctorate degree that you hold, doesn't make you less of anything. And that's a problem, because we're like kind of brainwashed ever since we're young to saying is that, okay, this is that, and that is this. In every aspect, it doesn't just have to be medicine. It can be like social, cultural, religious. Everything, we're just wired into like knowing what to do in the correct times. And it's just like, that's not a life to live. And you're allowed to explore your own journey. It might not be the right choice. It might not be the right journey, but it's your own mistake to make because you decided to do that. And I was just talking because I have a younger cousin here in Dubai, and he's graduating high school and going into the field of finding a major. And there's pressure for him to go into medicine. I'm just like, it's honestly not worth it if you don't want it. Like, why as a society are we trying to put pressure into someone for thinking that, okay, we've been through a pandemic, medicine is such an honorable, stable thing that we have to do? Are these what we're trying to look for in job? That's not what I'm personally trying to look for a job. I'm looking for a job that kind of encapsulates who I am as a person and the type of person I want to become and the things that I want to reach in life. And it's just that I hope people just, before they say anything to someone, realize the power of their words and certain like sometimes it comes off really pretty unnecessary to say certain things and like to wonder things. And everyone has their own life to live and their own experiences to give to this world and their society. It doesn't have to be the way that you accept it or the way society sees it.
Yeah, honestly, that there's, to be able to show people that you can just be who you want to be and not pressure them into doing something that is, I mean, this period that we're living in right now, I'm not sure if I'm correct in saying this, but I think that it's become one of those periods where it really just shows you the complexity of the human being, right? That we're so we have
it's a time of reflection.
Yeah, we have so many different layers. People, you never knew that you could be a YouTube star. You never knew you could be a TikTok star, and all these random things you can do on just because the internet is available, and it just allows you to open up the avenues for really just being working on something like a passion of yours or something like that, and breaking the norms. And you're right, I think it's unfair to always pressure people into certain, or corner them into certain aspects just because that was what was done before, or just because that's what's widely accepted.
That's what's safe for them.
Yeah, and look, I mean, to say safe and stuff, like, I'm the first one to say that, in certain respects in my life, I've taken the safe route. So it's...
Which isn't wrong.
I was just going to say, like, it's not wrong to take the safe route, but it's also
But it's not always right for a
for sure,
specific
yeah,
person.
yeah,
That's the thing, is
for
that it's
sure.
not wrong, but it's not always right.
Yeah, and I would just say, like we've tried to talk about this a couple of times, that many times, to just say that you have a passion and you might be doing something that you don't agree with, take it as a means, and then try to really accept accept really who you are, and work towards that kind of passion. You'll burn some bridges along the way, but what do you really want? Do you want the passion, or do you want to just work or live somebody else's life? And with that, Abudi, I want to say we have reached the conclusion.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's
a
been a
great
pleasure.
podcast.
There's a couple of final questions that I want to ask you. We can quick
Go
fire.
ahead.
Why did you decide to come on the show?
I felt like I've never really like delved into the whole thing of a podcast, or like, what was the app, the
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse, right? I've never spoken my mind, and recently I've been doing it, and I've been realizing how many people are similar to me in so many aspects of my life, or like have so much to share. And I feel like I'm the type of person, if that someone's willing to share with me, I'm willing to share what I know and and I want to give to the viewers, and saying that this is a reciprocal process, and I grow from these things just as much as they want to grow themselves. And I feel like this was a beneficial experience for me to try to like showcase my thoughts. And I've also like got to know the show a bit more and started seeing the other podcasts that have been available.
Amazing. Well, that's great to hear. We always try to give this as like a safe space, people to talk about things they care about, but also showcase, the inspiring sides of people that, and you never know, somebody might learn something, somebody might say, oh, that was a great experience, or maybe that's not the route that I'm going to take. Just allow it to be non-judgmental and all of that certain aspects. And what do you think of the name of the show, Nobody's Famous?
Honestly, I never truly understood it, but then when you were entering here, you told me something that made like the light bulb flash. It's just that it doesn't have to, you don't have to be famous to try to express your opinion or explore who you are as a person, or try to showcase your own experiences, even if you're not like an authority in that field, or someone who's well established or like well spoken in that specific thing. Is that everyone's opinion does matter, and everyone's experience does matter. That's something I learned for sure. And it's just great to have this medium of someone who like has been through stuff like in a specific thing, but isn't the usual regular person to go for.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we try to get a genuine experience, like a genuine, like, whether it's feedback or even just a real conversation. And it's always hard to see a new perspective, but sometimes you kind of need that. And as you said, sometimes you're going back to the same person all the time. It doesn't add to the variety of what you're trying to learn. And the final question, Abdul Sattar, is, do you have a question for me?
I just wanted to ask, is that what do you like the most when you get to have someone on the show and see their point of views? Like, what is something that seems to be similar with everyone who comes to the show, and what are the certain differences? Is that, do all these podcasts feel the same?
Yeah, there is. I always love the final questions, because people would either ask us, why are we doing this, or what's the next step with this. Those are some of kind of like the questions that we get, and it's nice because if somebody's watching this episode for the first time, they can hear the perspective on it. The differences is that there are a lot of the times where the guests, we challenge each other. The guests challenge me, I challenge them. And then there's some other times where you're just enamored by the story, and you just love to hear really from somebody that, as you said, never maybe seen them speak before, and they really have such an amazing experience to share. And I just really hope that even sometimes, even one person can listen to a show, watch the show, and just see that maybe that it could really help them in what they're going through. They might be sitting, especially now during these times, they might be sitting home alone. I would wish that these people would be watching and imagining that we were there with them and then we could help them and that they're not alone. So sometimes, some of the guests bring that out in you. They make exciting comments and stuff, and they really just always prove to us that we should still continue, keep going and work on the shows and continue to like showcase some of the amazing people that, either never had a chance to speak or just were,
Never given the mic.
Never given the mic, and they have an amazing voice, so to speak.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Abdul Sattar, to have you on the show. And with that, I want to conclude. Bruno on the keys, as always. And Abdul Sattar, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, man. Thank you so much for coming down. Guys, this has been the Nobody's Famous podcast, coming to you from the Subsonic Studios here in Dubai. It's been a pleasure. You can check us out on SoundCloud, Anghami, Stitcher, all those amazing places. And you can watch us on YouTube. Please check out Abdul Sattar and his work at Abdul Raslan on his Instagram. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right. Thank you so much, buddy.
My pleasure.